Hello friends, I welcome you in my video which is based on the Overseas Direct Investment New ODI Regime 2022. This is part 3 video and the topic of this video is financial commitment. So in this video we are going to discuss about the concept, provision and relevant rules and regulation about the financial commitments. So let's see. First, we will see what is the coverage of this video. So in this video, we are going to discuss about the meaning and modes of financial commitment. Okay. So the meaning and modes of financial commitment, this financial commitment by other than equity, by way of other than equity and the financial commitment by way of debt, then by way of guarantees, financial commitment by way of pledge or charge, then financial commitment by way of deferred payment, then what are the routes and limit for financial commitment, then and the lastly we will also talk about NOCs before making the financial commitment. Okay, so let's begin. So and we will start with the meaning of financial commitment. So it means the amount of investment, aggregate amount of investment by a person resident in India in foreign entity. The foreign entity we have already discussed in part 1 video. Okay, the foreign entity by way of first mode of investment is ODI, that is overseas direct investment. So any investment by way of ODI, it will be treated as financial commitment. For meaning and concept, you can refer the part 1 video, that is for overseas direct investment. Okay, because in this video we have already talked about the basic definition and concept in the new ODI regime. And the second mode of investment is debt. In debt, that is other than overseas portfolio investment. Okay, so the what is the overseas portfolio investment, that we have already discussed in part 2 video. So you can refer the part 2 video if you don't know about the overseas portfolio investment. And the third avenue for financial commitment is non-fund based facility to or on behalf of such foreign entity. Okay, so first is ODI, second is debt, and third is non-fund based facility. So the financial commitment means the total amount of investment or aggregate amount of investment by way of these three instruments, that is debt, ODI, and non-fund based facility. Then let's talk about financial commitment by modes other than equity. Okay, so in the earlier slide, we have seen that financial commitment can be made through equity, debt, and non-fund based facilities. So if it is made by modes other than equity, then what are the provisions? So here it is written that Indian entity may lend or invest into any debt instrument. Okay, debt instrument is a defined term. So debt instrument means other than the equity, okay, issued by foreign entity or extend non-fund based commitment to or on behalf of foreign entity including step down subsidiary. Okay, so what does it mean? The Indian entity may lend or invest into any debt instrument. Okay, so because here we are talking about other than equity, issued by foreign entity or extend non-fund based commitments, because here we are not talking about equity, that is we are not talking about equity, so here we are not talking about equity investment. Okay, so but it can happen, but subject to what? Subject to these three conditions. First condition is Indian entity is eligible to make overseas direct investment. Okay, so uh, there are certain conditions like, and the ODI can be made for this bona fide transaction, and there are other primary condition which a person resident in India has to satisfy before making. So if Indian entity must be eligible to make ODI. Okay, then second condition is IE, that is Indian entity has made ODI in foreign entity. Okay, so what does it mean? It means if a person resident in India wants to make financial commitment by way of what? Debt. So before doing that, it must have made the investment by way of ODI. That is, first investment must be through equity only. Okay, that can be in the listed company or unlisted company, or what are the modes, any modes which is given in the definition of ODI. Okay, so first condition was Indian entity is eligible to make ODI, and second condition is the Indian entity has made ODI in the foreign entity, and third condition is the Indian entity has acquired control at the time of making such financial commitment. Okay, so these three conditions are very important. Okay, so if any person resident in India wants to make the financial commitment by modes other than equity, then these condition has to be satisfied by the person resident in India. Okay. Now next is financial commitment by way of debt. So the Indian entity, it means we are talking about the investment other than the equity. Okay, so here what is written? Indian entity may lend or invest in any debt instrument of a foreign entity subject to. Okay, so there were in the last slide we have already discussed those three conditions. Then if you are making the financial commitment by way of what? Debt. It is by way of debt. So then these are the two conditions. So such loans are duly backed by loan agreement. So there has to be a loan agreement and the rate of interest to be charged on arm's length basis. This is very important. Okay, so for the purpose of this regulation, the expression arm's length means a transaction between two related parties that is conducted as if they were unrelated, so that there is no conflict of interest. So this is very important thing, that if the financial commitment is made by way of debt, then these are the two conditions. So first there should be a loan agreement and rate of interest to be charged on arm's length basis. Okay, next, the financial commitment by way of guarantee. So the next mode of investment is a by way of guarantee. So the forms of guarantee. So the guarantee can be this personal guarantee, bank guarantee, corporate guarantee, and other guarantees. Okay, so the forms, it can be a personal guarantee, corporate guarantee, or bank guarantee. Okay, now in this new ODI regime, the RBI has also permitted that guarantees can be given by the group companies or associates or promoters. Okay, so they can also give guarantees to or on behalf of any group company that is a foreign entity. Okay, so it happens because sometimes the net worth of this person resident, that is Indian entity, is not sufficient. So now the group companies are also allowed. It was, in fact, earlier also it was allowed, but now this word, the promoter group, they have added in this definition. So this is very important. Okay, now then no open-ended guarantee. So the guarantee has to have a certain amount of validity. Okay, so it should not be an open-ended guarantee. Okay, next is invocation of guarantee. So in case the if the guarantee is invoked and if the payment for the invocation is made, then to that extent the financial commitment will be reduced. Okay, it will come down. Okay, because the invocation is already done, so what will happen? The financial commitment will come down. Okay, the guarantee is issued jointly or severally. So what does it mean? If any guarantee issued by any Indian entity jointly or severally, then in that case, suppose there are two Indian entities, okay, A and B, and they have issued a guarantee jointly and severally of US dollar 1 lakh. In this case, US dollar will be counted separately for both these party. Okay, so to that extent, their financial commitment will be blocked or their net worth will be blocked because they have issued this guarantee jointly and separately. And next is performance guarantee. So in case if it is the performance guarantee, then 50% of the guarantee amount will be considered as financial commitment. Okay, so this is a special provision in case of performance guarantee. So the 50% of the amount of the guarantee will be considered as financial commitment. Okay, then rollover of guarantee. So in case when if there is any existing guarantee and which is rolled over further and there is no change in the amount of the guarantee. Okay, so in that case, it will not be treated as fresh financial commitment. Okay, so then in that case, the reporting will not be required. However, if the guarantee is enhanced, in that case, it has to be reported. Okay, so these are the certain provisions about the financial commitment by way of guarantees. Next is financial commitment by way of pledge or charge. So this is another mode of taking the financial commitment. So what does it say? It says Indian entity which has made ODI in foreign entity in foreign entity by way of equity capital may pledge the equity of foreign entity. Okay, so suppose if a PRI is in India and if it has made ODI by way of equity capital. Okay, the word is very important. We are not talking about debt. Then pledge the equity of foreign entity. Okay, so it can pledge the equity of foreign entity or SDS, that is step down subsidiary. Okay, in favor of in whose favor? In favor of AD bank or public financial institution in India or overseas lender. So that pledge can be done in favor of AD bank or overseas lender or public financial institution for availing the fund-based or non-fund-based facility for itself. Okay, itself means for person resident in India or for any foreign entity, means for this foreign entity or any step down subsidiary. So for this also, okay, so in all these three cases the pledge of the equity of foreign entity or step down subsidiary can be done. Okay, or so the another thing is in favor of or in favor of debenture trustee registered with SEBI for availing fund-based facility for itself. So the above scenario was there for the facility if any fund-based or non-fund-based facility is availed by this PRI or foreign entity or a step-down subsidiary. But if the facility is availed by the PRI itself, then this pledge can be in favor of debenture trustee registered with SEBI for availing fund-based facility. Okay, so in that case, the last condition is applicable when the facility is availed by the PRI. Okay, next, or. So first part was create the pledge. Now there we are talking about create charge on the assets in India. Assets in India means the assets of PRI. Okay, assets India of its own group company, associate, promoters or directors. So the charge can be created on any assets of its own group company, associate, promoter, director. Okay, for foreign entity or step down subsidiary outside India or okay. So this condition is about the assets in India. Okay. So create charge on the assets in India. So the assets can be of its or of its own group company, associates, promoter, director, and it can be for foreign entity or step down subsidiary outside India. Or so the second thing is assets outside India. Okay, so now if these assets are outside India, it means these must be of foreign entity or step down subsidiary because the assets are located outside India. So if the assets are outside India, then charge can be created for availing fund-based or non-fund-based facility for itself, means for PRI or for any FE, that is foreign entity, or for any step-down subsidiary outside India in favor of AD Bank or public financial institution in India or overseas lender. Okay, so now since there are two categories of assets, in the first one is if the assets are India, then the charge can be created for foreign entity or step down subsidiary outside India. Okay. Anyway, if the Indian entity is borrowing the funds from India, they can anyway create charge on its own asset. Okay, but for this provision, if the assets are in India, then it can be the charge can be created for foreign entity or step down subsidiary outside India. And if the assets are outside India, it means the assets of foreign entity or step down subsidiary, then for availing the fund based or non fund based facility for itself, for any foreign entity or step down subsidiary outside India, and in favor of AD Bank, public financial institution, or overseas lender. Okay. Or, so the third condition is a charge can be created in favor of debenture trustee registered with SEBI for availing fund-based facilities for itself. It means the assets, the assets of the assets outside India or in India. The charge can be created in favor of debenture trustee which is registered with SEBI for availing the fund-based facility for itself, mean the facility by PRI. Okay, so these are the provision for the pledge, the financial commitment by way of pledge. Now, here there is a provided that the value of pledge or charge or the amount of facility, whichever is less, shall be reckoned towards the financial commitment limit in force at the time of such pledge or charge, excluding limit already considered as financial commitment or facility by Indian entity for itself. What does it mean? It means suppose if the facility amount is 100 and the value of charge is 80. Okay, charge is 80. Okay, so for the purpose of making our financial commitment, whichever is less, it means we will consider 80. Okay, or it shall be reckoned towards financial commitment limit at the time of such pledge, excluding the limit already considered. So suppose if out of this 80 we have already considered 20 as a financial commitment. Okay, so that will not be counted against. But in this is both the case, whichever is less we will consider as financial commitment. Suppose if the case is vice versa, suppose assets are of rupees or $100 and the value of charge is 200. In this case, the value of financial commitment will be $100 only. Okay, so this is the meaning of this, an explanation. explanation is given that negative charge or negative place created by Indian entity or bid-bond guarantee for bidding the tender for acquisition of foreign entity shall not be reckoned towards financial commitment. Okay, it means that negative charge when borrower agrees that he will not create charge on its assets without permission of XYZ. It is called negative charge. So negative charge, since there is no actually charge created, therefore it will not be considered as financial commitment or the bid bond guarantee, because the if you are simply issuing the bid bond guarantee for bidding a tender, unless the tender is acquired or the performance guarantee is issued, there is no commitment by way of bid bond guarantee. So that's why these the negative charge and bid bond guarantees are not considered as part of financial commitment. Okay, next is financial commitment by way of deferred payment. So what is it? So where payment means that consideration is paid in tranches. Okay, one, two, three. So financial commitment where a person resident in India acquired equity capital by way of subscription or purchase from person resident outside India, or person resident outside India purchased from person resident in India as ODI. Sorry. Okay, so in this case, let us just repeat again. Where a PRA, that is person resident in India, acquired equity capital by way of subscription or purchase from person resident outside India, or PROI, that is person resident outside India, purchased equity capital from person resident in India as ODI. So in that case, the payment of consideration can be deferred. It means the payment can be made in tranches. Okay, not upfront. So it can be made in more than one tranches for such definite period from the date of agreement as per the terms of agreement. Okay, so suppose if I'm making any financial this commitment, but as per agreement, I can make the payment in suppose 50% at this point of time or 50% maybe after 6 months. Okay, so in that case it is allowed. However, but there are certain conditions. Okay, however, foreign securities to be transferred upfront. Okay, so what does it mean? It means if if a PRI is making investment in foreign entity, then the whatever the securities, that is equity share capital, has to be transferred upfront. Okay, then final consideration to be paid shall comply with the pricing guidelines. So whatever the pricing guidelines are there, it has to be in line with those guidelines. Okay, but in this regulation or rules or this direction, RBI has left up to on AD Bank to you know form a policy with regard to the valuation of equity. So deferred payment to be considered as non-fund based commitment for PRI. It means suppose if he has made the commitment but actually he has not paid, so it will be considered as non-fund based commitment and it will be reported accordingly. The buyer may be indemnified by the seller. This condition is very important. Buyer may be indemnified by the seller up to such amount and subject to terms and condition as may be mutually agreed and laid down in the agreement. So this is the based on the mutually agreed terms and condition. The buyer maybe so the seller can indemnify the buyer for any the price variation or for making uh, uh, the amount of commitment. Okay, so basically it is nothing but the seller is is indemnifying the buyer because the payment is going to be made on deferred basis, but the security has been issued upfront. Okay, so in that case, this is the relevance. Next, routes and limits available for financial commitment. So if we talk about routes, then first route is automatic route. Automatic routes means you don't require any permission from RBI. Okay, so subject to rules, regulation, direction, and Indian entity engaged in bona fide transaction activities can invest up to 400% of its net worth. That is the net worth of Indian entity as per last audited balance sheet. Okay, so this is the condition, this is the maximum limit it is given. But in case of the exceptions are given, that Navratna, Maharatna or Mini Ratna or subsidiary of such PSUs, this limit is not applicable. Other than these company, the limit is 400% of net worth. Invest directly or through step down subsidiary or SPV. So the 400% is net worth, and the investment can be made directly or through SDS or special purpose vehicle. And then in case of approval route, the approval from central government. So there are two approval. First is from central government and second is from RBI. So in case this overseas investment in Pakistan or other jurisdiction as may be notified by the central government, or strategic sector not permitted, or specific jurisdiction not allowed under general permission. So if the overseas investment is made in this case, then the approval will be required from central government. Okay, or the approval from RBI. So overseas investment exceeding USD 1 billion per financial year, the limit is given that 4% of 400% of net worth. But if any overseas investment is exceeding USD 1 billion per financial year, even the same is within the 4% of net worth limit, and other cases not permitted under automatic route, then in this case the approval from RBI will be required and it is must. Okay, again the exception is there, the Navratna, Maharatna, Mini Ratna subsidiary of such PSUs, this limit is not applicable. So basically for this company there is no limit. Okay, so these are the limits and routes available for making the financial commitment. Now the last part is NOCs before making any financial commitment. So the following cases requires NOCs, that is no objection certificate, before making a financial commitment or making any disinvestment. Okay, so if you are going to make any financial commitment or if you are making any disinvestment, that the prior NOCs is required in these cases. First case is NPA account. So where a borrower is NPA and who has made any ODI, for making a further financial commitment or disinvestment, he has to take the NOC or willful defaulter with a lender. So this is the first case. Then the borrower or the Indian entity is under investigation with any investigative, that is CBI or ED, etc. So if any investigation is going on, then in such case also the NOC is required. Then NOCs to be obtained from respective lender or regulator or investigative agency. Okay, so if suppose the CBI inquiry is going on, then a NOC must be obtained from CBI, or if it is enforcement director, then ED or any investigative agency, or if it is lender, then NOCs. So basically in these three cases and this scenario, the NOCs will be required by the Indian entity before making any financial commitment. Okay, where an Indian entity, thus another important provision is given, where an Indian entity has already issued a guarantee in accordance with FEMA and before any above events and subsequently. What does it mean? If the guarantees were issued in accordance with the FEMA, but the account was regular, there was no investigation was going on. Then subsequently the Indian entity, okay, after issuance the guarantee, even though account is become NPA, but the Indian entity is required to honor such obligation. Okay, such remittance as a result of invocation will not be treated as a fresh financial commitment. Therefore, NOC will not be needed in this case. Okay, so what does it mean? It means if a guarantee was already issued, okay, before the beginning the account as NPA or before the starting of any investigation by any investigative agency, and the Indian entity is required to honor such obligation. So the remittance on account of such invocation of guarantee will not be treated as fresh financial commitment. Therefore, NOC will not be needed in this case. Okay. So friends, this was a summary and the concept and relevant provision with respect to financial commitment. I have tried to capture or cover the provisions from the rules, the regulation or the direction issued by the central government or the Reserve Bank of India, because in the new regime all three documents has to be read together to interpret those certain provision. So friends, this was all for this video. Thank you. Thank you all.